They've always underestimated you. Maybe they thought you were just another face in the crowd. Someone who misses air patterns, shifts, and changes before others do. But you did. You saw through the illusions and discovered faults in the foundation, long before they were undeniable. It wasn't just a feeling. It was certainty, the sort of knowledge that does not need proof, the kind that puts you ahead of everyone else while they're still catching up. They called it paranoia. They called it overthinking. They stated you were experiencing hallucinations. But time is your witness, because they all said it would never happen. Everything is going just as you imagined. And now they're rushing, trying to figure out what you saw coming. It was never about luck. It was never about chance. This was about you, your vision, your instincts, your connection to something beyond their understanding. And this is what shakes them to their core. They never feared what you knew. They feared who you were. You were never just another part of their game. You were an oddball, the one who does not just read the script. You tweak it. And now, as everything crashes around them, they realize the truth. Too late. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. The warnings were present. They pressed on, unshaken. They are certain of their own infallibility. There is no need for persuasion. There is no need for a debate. Simply the truth, unvarnished. Then it seemed like the air itself moved. The sequence began. It wasn't immediate at first. The fissures were small. It's easy to overlook. However, skepticism seeped into their tones. Stolen glances exposed their doubts. The ground underneath them started to shift. The same folks who had previously rejected all warning signs. Now they were looking for solutions, grabbing for certainty that no longer existed. As their hold on the fantasy they had built crumbled, desperation replaced hubris. They now see it. Undeniable. Inevitable. The weight of knowing hangs heavy in the silence they refuse to acknowledge. The realization is now sinking in. Slow and suffocating dread and denial intertwine in a fight between their pride and reality. They can no longer ignore what was earlier dismissed as speculation. It is now a reality. The echoes of their own skepticism tower over them, lingering in conversations they will never forget. Words said with conviction have turned to sadness. They keep repeating similar incidents, looking for a vacation, an alternative explanation, anything to make it all mean something else. However, deep down, the recognition exists, the awareness that this was never an opportunity. This was not luck. This was no coincidence. And it frightens them more than anything. Every warning and truth is preserved in time, ignored, only to be rediscovered. Too late, dismissed as noise, ignored as meaningless, until reality smashed down. Undeniable and inescapable. Now there is no room for doubt. The events that were so easily ignored transpired exactly as foretold. The betrayal, disintegration, and inevitable collapse. It is everything there. Undeniable. Irreversible. They sift through the remnants of their confidence. They were seeking for an escape from what they had vowed would never happen. However, the past will not bend. It doesn't yield. It acts as a tribute to all misplaced words, each mistaken belief, and that realization. The impending finality of truth is what disturbs them right now. However, if it comes from God, you will be powerless to stop these people. You'll just find yourself striving against God. A stronghold built on lies may only survive so long. At first look, it seems robust, unbreakable, towering, and tall, as if it was built to last forever. But here's the issue with false foundations. They shatter under the weight of truth. The truth gradually emerges. When reality begins to shine through, no amount of patching will keep the structure intact. They thought they were untouchable. They felt they could change history, control the story, erase everything they've done. But let me tell you something. You cannot avoid the truth, and you surely cannot outrun God. At one point, their voices were full of confidence. They spoke with certainty, mocking, laughing. They distorted the facts to fit their story. They disregarded all warnings, indicators, and opportunities to modify their course, because they thought they had perfect control. But control is an illusion, and now they watch it go through their fingers like sand. And now, they are now scurrying. They now stutter. They were previously quite confident and adventurous. They were quite vocal about their accusations and dismissals. They have gotten silent. Because certainty comes naturally when there are no consequences. Confidence comes easily when there is no obligation. But once the cracks start to form, when the truth surfaces, the loudest cries dwindle into whispers. They rephrase their words, shift their perspective, and tweak their story just enough to make it seem as if they were never incorrect. However, you can't alter the past. This is not a story that can be altered in real time. They said these things, the actions they took, the means by which they maintained their falsehood. Everything has now been written in stone. People recall the worst aspects. Because lying is only successful when people are willing to forget. They relied on it. They anticipated people to lose interest. Moving on. Letting go. However, there are too many eyewitnesses. Too many individuals observed the event in real time. Too many people heard their words. I witnessed their actions, and are not easily misled by a sudden change in tone. See, they thought they had the power. However, power is founded on lies, is borrowed time, and the debt has come due. They felt they had control of the pieces. However, the game has turned against them. They are now being cornered. And you? You don't have to do anything. You do not need to disclose them. You don't have to battle to prove yourself. You have no duty to amend the record. The truth does it for you. And nothing is worse for them. They understand they have no influence over what happens next. Because when the illusion falls, the smoke clears, and the dust settles, nothing stands still. But this is the truth, and they'll be forced to sit amid the ruins of their own creation. So they seek to change the script. They weren't mistaken. Not really. They just had misgivings. They never dismissed anything outright, only questioned it. They weren't against you, only neutral observers. But no matter how carefully they attempt to spin this new story, the truth remains. They were not passive spectators. They were unwavering in their denial and disdain. And now, while they try to re-establish their prior position, they are unable to shake the weight of their own past. There are too many eyes looking at them. The proof is too clear, and the reality is too harsh to ignore. There is no room for evasion anymore. It is much too late for that. And their memories of their own confidence have been proven incorrect. We shall follow them even when the dust has cleared. They put the strategy into effect. I am certain you will crumble under the weight of their falsehoods. A network of whispers, well-placed distortions, and deliberate misleading. All of this is meant to trap you in the mess they created. But illusions have a way of turning on their creators, and before long, the web they built began to unravel from inside the power they thought they controlled. The story slipped through their fingers, their grasp on control weakened by their own errors. The voices that had before spoken their lies started to waver. The same allies they had counted on started to distrust their intentions for you. It went inside and ate them instead. You have never had to fight for your truth. It stood firm on its own as they attempted to flee the fire they had caused. When the storm passes, the wicked are gone, but the good endure eternally. The Proverbs. A sand-built dwelling may only survive a season. But when the storm arrives, the winds scream and the waters rise, that house is destroyed. And that is exactly what is happening right now. They envision themselves as the story's builders, crafting a stunning illusion that no one could see through. However, illusions do not have weight. And now, under the weight of the truth, their whole structure is disintegrating. They were assured they were in charge. They were certain they had devised the ultimate deception. But let me tell you something. God does not bless. There is no mess. They thought they were the ones pulling the strings. The masterminds are the unseen forces who mold the tale to their advantage. But they overlooked one thing. You can't outsmart divine order. You cannot modify reality indefinitely. You cannot conceal the truth. The truth was never theirs to retain in the first place. Lies. They have an expiration date. They may thrive for a while. They could even sway the gullible for a time. But, in the end, every deception must bear the consequences. And the fire is here. They are now standing amid the rubble of what they produced. I watched helplessly as they sought to rule the earth. Slips right past their fingers. People who had previously believed them. They walked away. They used to depend on their friends. Gone. Vanished. Like smoke in the air. And it is what is eating them alive. Because what they desired most was neither power or influence. It was validation. They needed people to believe in their story. They crafted. They wanted their words to be important and their lies to take root. However, the land was never productive. And now, every lie they said has vanished, leaving just dust behind. They tried to reproduce something that wasn't meant for them. They emulated. They imitated. They tracked every move you took. I am certain that if they could just capture your essence, they may rebuild the strength that defines you. However, imitation is an inexpensive counterfeit. You cannot steal the anointing. You cannot generate divine favor. And while they tried to adapt to who they thought you were, they lost sight of themselves. They're now hollow. Now, they have gotten lost. The mask has slipped. The disguise has gone. And all that's left is a fragile shell of who they were. They thought they could take shortcuts to greatness. They imagined they could work their way into something divine. But they failed to comprehend that what is really decided cannot be replicated, stolen, or touched. And so they stay fractured, exposed. They are desperate to return to the fantasy in which they once controlled. But the illusion has dissipated. The truth is standing tall. And you are still here, still ascending, still walking with purpose, while they collapse beneath the weight of their own falsehood. Because when the storm comes, when floods rise, when the wind shivers, everything that was never meant to stand, only the real endures. And you were never the one who had to worry. It all started with curiosity, a transient concern. However, as they watched, they got more bewildered. The transformation started slowly. They're slowly losing touch with their actual selves. They borrowed, imitated, absorbed. I'm certain that they could replicate your presence. They may claim authority behind it. However, stolen flames never burn uniformly. What they thought was mastery devolved into erosion. They are gradually losing their identity. And now they're left with fragments of an identity they can't identify. They tried to transform themselves into something they weren't meant to be. And in doing so, they severed ties with the same foundation that previously gave them significance. But you never roamed while others followed a mirage. You strolled forward, uncaring, untouched. And now, standing in the rubble of their own destruction, they understand it's too late. This road was never meant for them. They tried every method, whispered remark, and deliberate action to shatter you. The games were sophisticated, the traps were meticulously prepared, and betrayals were cleverly placed. They were certain that they could control the outcome and that their strategy would beat you. But nothing worked. The disaster they predicted never occurred. They didn't get the unwinding they anticipated. And now they are left with nothing but their own demise. They don't comprehend it. How? Nothing they did was enough. How every attempt to alter your fate failed before it could take impact. The despondency has turned into horror. Their confidence led to sleepless nights. Because everything they do now has repercussions for them. They are presented with a reality they had never considered. They were never in control. Now comes the punishment. The moment they had been dreading for so long has finally arrived. There is no escape the weight of what they have set in motion. For they have sown the wind, and they'll reap the whirlwind. Isaiah 8:7. They thought they could sow lies and harvest success. They believed they could design traps, yet never fall into them. But the Lord is not mocked. What a man sows, he will also reap. They established their rule by deception. Their house sits on shifting sand. And now, the water has come. The storm they unleashed to devour you has turned. And now it chases them with vengeance. They were really convinced. They had complete authority. They were certain that they had outmaneuvered every imaginable outcome. But they overlooked one thing. You can't play chess with the Almighty and expect to win. They were the architects of their own downfall. Every move is designed to bring you down. They planned in secret, chatting in the dark. They created narratives so well that even they started to believe the lies. They called it strategy. They called it wisdom. But let me tell you something. There is no wisdom, insight, or guidance that can challenge the Lord. Their plans were foiled, and their illusions exposed. They dug a very deep ditch. Suddenly, the ground underneath them collapsed, and they are descending into the same darkness they had intended for you. Oh, they thought they were untouchable. They marched boldly, full of conceit. They traveled throughout the globe as if they had already won. They surrounded themselves with enablers. People who fostered their pride reinforced their fantasies. I uttered nice affirmations in their ears. No one will ever find out. Nobody will ever stop you. However, the voices have quieted. Those who once supported them are turning away, and now they are seeking for help and rescue. For only one outstretched hand. There is nothing. There are no safety nets or escape routes. The door is shut, and there is no way out. Because this is something they have never understood. You cannot curse what God has blessed. You can't stop what heaven has prepared for you. The one they tried to break. They plotted against him and swore that he would never rise. You are still here, not only standing, but thriving. Not only do they survive, but they also develop. See, they thought they were battling against you. However, they were not fighting with flesh and blood. They were fighting against a mission, a calling, or a divine mandate. And that was a battle they could never win. They truly wanted to take you down. They discarded all they possessed. Every weapon, every rumor, every devious plot. They spent so much time trying to control the story, shape it in their favor, and bury the truth so deeply that no one would ever find it. But let me tell you something about reality. It does not need defense. It does not need an army. It is not necessary to fight for recognition, since, when the time comes, truth will stand on its own. When this occurs, every deception collapses like a house of cards. And that is exactly what is happening right now. They created the storm, and now they're stranded in it. They were the ones who used their hands to do devastation. And now, catastrophe is eating all they built. You don't even have to lift a finger. You do not need to seek revenge. You do not need to prove anything. All you have to do is keep marching, rising, and moving forward. Because the conflict has already been won. You were chosen for something bigger. You were never meant to fit in. Never meant to be controlled. I never planned to adopt their beliefs. And now, as they sit in the ashes of their imagined accomplishment, they finally understand. They never had any impact on you. They never had a chance. They were never the ones to stir the pot. They were never the ones to lead the charge. They just stood there, watching, observing, and letting things happen. It was not their battle, after all. They isolated themselves, assuming that silence made them neutral. But neutrality is a choice. In the absence of action, complicity developed. They dismissed the warnings, brushed off the signs, and laughed at the idea that things could go this way. However, now that the dust has cleared and the truth is clear, they are struggling with the weight of their own inaction. They replay debates in their thoughts, recalling instances when they could have acknowledged, facts they could have realized, and the clarity they lacked before. Is cutting now the realization that the warning signs were there all along? They just choose not to notice them. And the worst part? You never need affirmation. You figured it out far before anybody else. And this awareness troubles them in ways they won't acknowledge. They won't admit it. Will not communicate the grief that lies under the surface. But it is there, in the hesitancy. They avoid your gaze. During the stillness. Recognizing that the truth was always within grasp. They were unprepared to face it. They claimed indifference. They were certain that the past was behind them. However, their attention is never diverted for long. Every update, every tiny movement is quietly observed, hiding under veils of anonymity, looking for evidence that their efforts were not in vain. They justify it as simple curiosity, only a fleeting glance. However, the truth is crisper. They are eager to know. Was their strategy successful? Did the cracks they tried to cut really form? Did their intended chaos leave a lasting impression? And the realization that nothing had unraveled, but instead divided. Burns caused a higher loss than they had anticipated. Worse, they see success unfold. I am unmoved by their impact. They left no effect on me. And it becomes the one thing from which they cannot escape. What started as a search for confirmation has grown into something altogether else. They are unable to overcome their infatuation and refuse to accept it. They study every behavior, not to celebrate failure, but to better comprehend resilience. What was originally intended to destroy has evolved into a search for understanding. But the silence and unwillingness to communicate, a lack of reactivity, it destroys them more than any confrontation ever could. Because, in the end, losing isn't what bothers them the most. It's recognizing that things were never significant in the first place. They painstakingly developed their story, block by block, Facts were intertwined so skillfully that they began to believe the story. For a while, it worked. Every term, every distortion was meticulously placed until the fractures were visible. Not immediately, not at a single moment, but in gradual and obvious changes. Conversations that had previously flowed smoothly became hesitant. Glances, once full of confidence, are now tainted with doubt. Those who formerly gave unwavering support have become distant and unwilling. They are no longer prepared to defend what they formerly accepted without question. The unraveling is neither loud nor sudden. It is slow, agonizing, impossible to control. They can feel it in the shifting gaze, the tiny pauses before responses, and the energy that once favored them but now repels them. They try to halt it, to mend what is slipping through their fingers, to remind people of the version they diligently made. Unfortunately, there is no way to retake control. When the weight of truth bears down from all sides, the more they try to distort, the more the threads unravel. And what they never expected, what they never imagined possible, has come true. They've lost control of the narrative. And the worst part? They realize there is nothing they can do to prevent it. The Lord will fight for you. You just need to stay stationary. The Exodus. They felt they could handle the conflict. They hoped that their words, manipulations, and desperate attempts to pull you into their mess would disturb you. But let me tell you something. Your unwillingness to play was the most powerful decision you have ever made. They set the stage. They created the tale. They waited for you to show up, defend yourself, and prove them wrong, to fall into their trap. But you stood still. You allowed them to talk. You allowed them to throw the stones. You let them waste their breath. And it's making them insane. Because this is what they don't get. Silence is not equivalent to surrender. Silence is a strategy. Silence equals power. And when you walk with divine favor, you are not obligated to check every rumor. You do not need to explain yourself to those who are predisposed to misunderstand you from the start. You don't have to combat problems that were resolved before they began. So they're waiting. They wait for confirmation that they have reached you. Their statements had an enduring influence. Their attempts to break you were not in vain. But there is no reaction. There is no trace of a battle. There is no indication that their arrows hit their intended target. It's right there. That is what is harming them. Because the moment they realized they couldn't shake you, they lost all control. They sought to control the narrative, but the weight of their own lies is now bearing down on them. They're suffocating under the rumors they spread. They wove webs. They are caught in their own lies. They thought they were setting a trap for you. Instead, they stepped right into one of their own inventions. And they look about, seeking the recognition on which they once thrived. They see only the emptiness of their own creation. See, they want to dispute. They wanted to see your struggle, to observe your response and make you question yourself. But they never realized that the most strong warriors don't always fight with swords. They fight with discipline. They struggle with faith. They fight without really fighting. You do not need to answer since heaven has already done so. You do not need to explain yourself when the truth is already working in your favor. And you don't have to deal with people who weren't intended to have access to your spirit in the first place. So let them watch. Allow them to refresh their web pages. Let them wait in the shadows. Allow them to whisper between themselves. You owe them nothing. No words, no explanations, not even a glance in their direction. Because they are concerned about what you are doing, but you are too concentrated on winning to notice them. And that's what truly destroys them. Something has changed, and they can sense it in the air. The repercussions of their own actions affect individuals in unforeseen ways. There was no confrontation. There is no last battle. Just the growing realization that they had lost something before they had started. They were confident in their ability to exert authority. They felt they could influence the outcome. But you carried on while they stayed trapped in the wreckage they wrought. Their previously unwavering confidence has faded. Their comments were reserved. Their presence disappeared. Every action has led them here, and it cannot be reversed. What appeared to be an endless cycle of manipulation has finally come to an end. Not because they gave up, but because they were abandoned. They no longer have access to you. No longer wields influence. I no longer have a place in your world. That was the unforeseen impact. While others are forced to linger on the consequences of their acts, you emerge undamaged, uncaring, and untouchable. This is the existing reality, which cannot be altered. They are nothing more than a lesson in self-destruction, proof that the truth always wins over lies. What's left of their effect? Nothing except a faint memory.